Hello again, and welcome to Parenting Stuff I Wish I Knew Sooner, and I Want You to Know Now. I'm your host, Erica Desper, founder of Center for Confident Parenting, and a mom who seems to learn everything I needed to know the hardest way. And I'm here on a mission to help others learn those things earlier in their journey. Today, my guest is Maria Sanders. She's mom to two kids, ages 10 and 12, a licensed social worker, and certified trainer in collaborative problem solving. Maria has specialized in working with children and families for over 20 years and bringing together her knowledge and expertise in the areas of child development, conscious parenting, and social emotional development to support parents to create a sense of calm, confidence, and connection within themselves and their families. Maria also facilitates engaging school-based presentations, parent workshops, individualized parent coaching. Phew, Maria, thank you for joining me.
Such a nice description.
I know, don't you feel so
I wrote
accomplished?
it, or you wrote it. There's a collaboration, but I love it.
Love it, love it, love it. So I know you quite well. We go way back, like we were talking before we hit record. But for our audience, tell us a bit about yourself, your family, and how and why you came to offer families this type of support.
So for years, I was a school social worker working on the child study team. I also spent a lot of years doing early intervention, both as a teacher and social worker. After having my kiddos, I took a couple years off knowing, I just wanted to spend time with them when they were little, but always knowing I'd go back, and I didn't know that capacity. And I didn't actually know what parent coaching was, and kind of fell upon it and really dove in because I realized this is not easy work. And it often feels lonely. It feels like, as I work with so many parents, I'm like, doesn't every family have a child with challenging behaviors? Because that's all I see. And I know parents are not alone in feeling that. At the same time, it feels lonely because I don't think people talk about it a lot. So I know they're not alone, but it does feel lonely because who are you talking to? Like, it's really challenging to have a child with challenging behavior. So,
And then there's the guilt factor, right? We talk a lot about mom guilt or parent guilt on here. Like, is this something
100%,
I'm
just
doing
me.
wrong or could be doing better or whatever? And maybe sometimes that's the case, but often it's just like kids are challenging.
Yep, 100%. So now I have a private practice. I'm located in Montclair, New Jersey, where I see my clients in person. I also have a strong virtual practice just because I do see parents across the country and even in other countries, which is fun. Um, so yeah,
I
that's
love
pretty
it.
much what I do. And like you had said, going back into schools and offering workshops, professional development for teachers, and in collaborative problem solving.
Yeah, awesome. So one of your areas is just parent coaching in general. What you said you hadn't heard of that when you ventured into it, so we can safely assume that maybe some other parents don't know that that's a thing either. So for anyone not familiar with it, what is a general description of parent coaching? What does that look like? And then also specifically, what is this collaborative problem solving and how's that different?
Yeah. So my background is in therapy. I'm a licensed social worker. I spent, aside from schools, I also spent a lot of years doing in-home therapy for at-risk youth, crisis intervention. And so the reason why I wanted to get a parent coaching certification is to understand the difference between therapy and coaching so that I was well aware that if I was wearing that parent coaching hat, I wasn't crossing over into that therapy kind of lane, because it's almost like the Venn diagram, right? There's
There's
differences
overlap.
and there's a whole lot of similarities.
Mhm.
Um, what I would say is the similarity is that this is therapeutic. Parents are coming to me because they need support, they need an outlet, they need a place to vent and have that heard by a trusted professional whose focus is on helping parents, right?
Mhm.
Um, where it's a little bit different, or at least with the work I do as a parent coach, is it's very action based.
Mm.
I do a lot of talking. I do a lot of teaching. So I feel like the model of work I do is not that I'm like lecturing parents, but I am teaching them specifically collaborative problem solving. So I'm teaching them about that approach and how to implement that in their home. And we do a lot of role play and practice so that they feel confident when they hang up the call or, leave my office, that they feel capable and empowered to use that approach at home. And so I offer homework. There's a lot of communication that way. And it's very forward focused. So I don't spend time focusing on the past. Sometimes it comes up, right? Like, oh, you know what? My parents were really strict. And so that's why we're really strict. Or my parents were really strict. And that's why we're absolutely not so strict. We don't really focus on it a whole lot. Sometimes it comes up, but our focus is really on what is today's challenge and how do we manage that, navigate that, kind of shift that trajectory so that we can see different outcomes.
Got it. Awesome. And I imagine the role play piece and the language, or I like to call them scripts, that you give parents are incredibly helpful. I think as a parent, I mean, I'm in essence a parent coach as well, just specific to sleep and potty
Mhm.
training. One of the things parents always say to me is like, literally, what do I say? Like, say it. I'm
Right.
going to write it down. I want to know what to say. And that can be hard because it's situationally dependent, of course. But in those heat of the moment things, when your logical brain is maybe not, at its best, it's really helpful to have rehearsed something.
Mhm.
I did not prep you for this, but in hindsight, I should have. Can you think of an example off the top of your head, a scenario that played out poorly, and then you kind of say, like, if the parent had said this or done that, here's how it would have played out, more productively. I don't want to say wrong, bad, or better.
Yeah.
What would an example of that be? I'm sure I could think a ton with my
Yeah.
own
No,
kid.
I was just thinking about a family I met with yesterday,
Okay, that's
actually.
helpful.
Yep. They have a 4-year-old child, and the child was told, I have the worst memory.
I
It's just like less than 24 hours ago. But the child was told something about like, okay, we'll let you watch TV in the morning as long as you do X, Y, and Z. Brush your teeth, get dressed,
Right.
and I
Which
don't know
this
what
is a
other.
very common thing that we
Right.
try as
Right.
parents.
And one of the parents came out of their bedroom and saw the child sitting on the couch watching TV and had not brushed their teeth and had not gotten dressed, and kind of escalated a bit and was like, wait, what's going on here? You
Hmm.
know, now you're losing TV for a week,
Mm,
which is a typical
right.
response. It is not the worst response.
It's more
There
of a
are,
reaction, right?
yes,
Than a
yes.
plotted out response.
And said, look, I'm not good in the morning. I'm always
Right.
tired. I don't sleep well. Okay.
Hmm.
That's important to recognize,
Hmm.
right? None of us are bad on purpose. None of
Right.
us take things away from our kids because we really think that that is the best approach. It's typically a response, or like you use the word reaction, a reaction that we go with when we're not operating at our best and when we feel like, I don't know what else to do. And so, yeah, I'm taking this away because my prefrontal cortex, the thinking
Right.
part of my brain is just offline and I'm not thinking straight and I don't know what else to do. And maybe that'll work. Well, it didn't work in this situation. The child also escalated and cried and said things that were mean, you're not fair, da da da. Da.
Sure.
And so, we talked about a number of things. It starts with the parent. You do recognize, you told me that what was going on for you. It is so important for us to take that time to slow down and recognize, what do we have going on beneath the surface,
Right.
right? What is brewing that is contributing to your decision making and your ability to think clearly in that decision making. And so we talked about, let's just explore, right? Let's explore what other possibilities there could be. You could have done what you did. That's always an option, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can always go with that option of taking things away, giving a consequence, maybe trying to bribe the kid like, hey, buddy, just get your stuff together and I'll give you another 30 minutes of TV time. That is an option. There's some limitations, and
Sure.
if I had 3 hours, we could really talk and dive into that. We could just
Another
say no,
day.
right? One of the things that the parent said was that the child wanted the parent to help them get dressed.
Hmm.
The child is 4, and that's also very typical, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes 4-year-olds want to get dressed by themselves and they're like, oh, look at me, I can get dressed by myself. And other times it's like, no, just do it for
Just do
me.
it for me. Yep.
And we explore what that means. What is the child trying to communicate? Are they trying to get some attention? Maybe, right? Maybe the parent's working a lot. Maybe the parent wasn't home at bedtime or something like that and just needs a little bit of time with the parent and doesn't have the cognitive or verbal skills to say, hey, I just need you to spend time with me. And it's coming out like, I just need you to put on my socks, right?
Right.
We've given in and said, fine, I'll get you dressed and just let it go for the moment.
Pick
The
your
parent
battles.
wasn't in a good place,
Mhm.
right? The parent was already getting escalated. So they could have just said, fine, I'll just do it and we'll figure out another plan for another time. Or, which is my favorite response, which is a more collaborative approach and partnering with the child to figure out a solution the next time and try to really come from a place of curiosity. Like, hey,
Mm.
kiddo, seems like you're having a tough time getting dressed and brushing your teeth this morning. What's going
Mhm.
on?
Yeah,
I don't
I
know if
love
that was
that.
like a super long answer to your
No,
question.
that's it's really good. Um, I I want to stress to parents a few things about that before we move on. One, I mean, you're talking about doing that with a 4-year-old. So I think some parents might hear this and be like, I'm going to collaborate with my 4-year-old. Like this chick is crazy, right? So how is that how young you feel like you've seen these strategies be appropriate at those younger ages?
100%. And look, I don't work with a whole lot of parents of kids under the age of 4, but there
Mhm.
have been times, or someone who has like a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old or something
Mhm.
like that. And I didn't actually talk about one of the questions you had asked that I don't think I answered was what is collaborative problem solving?
Right.
And so to sort of answer why it is appropriate for a 4-year-old, I can explain what collaborative problem solving CPS is.
Mhm.
It's a trauma informed approach and it's based in the neurosciences, which has to do with the brain and helping the brain build skills. And so one of the reasons why it's appropriate for 4-year-olds is because one of the parts of what I'm helping the parent do or the teacher in the classroom is shift their mindset. How are we looking at behavior? Are we looking at behavior like the child is doing it on purpose?
Mm.
They're doing this to
Giving us a hard
manipulate me.
time.
They're doing this to push my buttons. They just know exactly, right? If we are, okay, so there's like two paths, right?
Mhm.
If we're looking at it from that perspective, the child is doing this on purpose. I have to make them stop. I
Mhm.
need to make them do something differently.
Mhm.
Then typically, what are we doing? We're saying, okay, well, if it's my job to make them stop doing that behavior, I've got to find a way to motivate them or incentivize them to do something differently.
Mhm.
And so typically that results in a reward, a bribe, a consequence, or a punishment. And there's some limitations to that. There's some things that you can teach from rewards and consequences. I'm not saying they're terrible,
Right.
terrible. They're
And we
just
can
a
dig
bit
into that in a little
limited,
bit.
right?
Mhm.
They typically aren't a long-term solution. That's what parents tell me all the time. Like, I took away dessert, I took away TV, but like, I can't keep doing that. It's not changing behavior. So the other path is coming from that place of curiosity and recognizing that challenging behavior is actually coming from a place of lagging skills. We all have many different skills we're learning at 2 years old, at 4 years old, at 14, and at 44, right? And so the way we want parents to start considering to look at challenging behavior is from this mindset of behavior is about skill, not will. So it's almost like a learning disability. If a child was struggling with reading, we don't punish them, we don't reward them. We say this is skill based. It's something with comprehension, fluency, decoding, and we work to build those skills so that the child can read at grade level. That's sort of how we're shifting our mindset and looking at behavior.
It's
Behavior
more
has to
the your
do
child's having a hard time versus
exactly. And they're
intentionally
having a hard
giving you.
time because they're struggling with some key skills like flexibility, frustration tolerance, and problem solving. And so we know that if we can build the skills, if it's reading, we're building the skills so they can read at grade level. And if it's behavior, we're building those brain skills so that they can handle or consider different options and work to have different behaviors, more adaptable and appropriate behaviors.
Right. I love that. I
And
love
so just shifting your mindset, even with a 4-year-old, and giving the child an opportunity. Sometimes we forget that our kids have great ideas. And even 4-year-olds, even if they don't know
oh,
the
they
answer.
do.
So one of the pieces in CPS is, so what ideas do you have so that next time, we could do things differently, basically. Parents are like, my 4-year-old's not going to know what to say. They don't know. They're going to just say, I don't know. That's fine. We're still giving them a platform where they can explore and use those muscles in their brain to consider ideas. Then we can help coach them along and say, okay, kiddo, I have an idea. What about if we tried this? Right. But absolutely, we can do this with 4-year
Yeah.
olds.
And you mentioned lagging skill. I often hear it communication is, either a lagging skill or an unmet need. And one of the ones I see a lot of times with kids is that they want a sense of agency and they want to assert themselves over the situation or whatever, which again, parents perceive as like, oh, you're trying to be in charge, you're trying to be the boss. But like, look, we all want some say so over how our day goes and what we're wearing and what we're eating and when we're eating. As I'm listening to you, I'm imagining even if the child doesn't have an idea or their idea is ludicrous and not based in reality because they're 4, um, just imagine, parents, the effect that pulling them into the conversation and just posing that question is going to have on oh, we're doing
How
this
good would that
together. Yeah,
totally? And how good
totally.
would that feel to the child, whatever age they are, 4 years old or 16 years old, to say, hey, kiddo, I really need your help here.
Mhm.
We're struggling with this morning routine or getting to bed on time or, getting home from a party on Saturday nights if it's a high schooler, right?
Mhm.
We're having a tough time and I'm not mad at you. I really am not. I'm really just curious and I would love your help to figure out what can we do and what's
Right,
going on? What's making it difficult for you to brush your teeth in the morning?
right. Beautiful, beautiful. The other thing I wanted to emphasize, having tried to shift both my mindset and my language with my child, is that in the moment, what you're suggesting feels like it takes not only a lot of bandwidth mentally to take that like pause and remember what to do and say and what to not do and say, and then like shift your language and exude this calm, collaborative thing. If you aren't used to it, you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, this is like so time consuming and overwhelming. However, I assume your response to that would be like in the moment, yes, but in the long term, then there will likely be fewer of these moments where you're sort of running into this not collaborative situation.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of things involved in sort of when it starts to get easier, right? The collaborative problem solving approach, sort of like the script, what we say to our kids, is pretty simple. There's part one, we call it the first ingredient, the second ingredient, the third, right? It's clear, it's simple, it makes sense. It's not easy.
Right.
It's really difficult. It's really difficult for me, and I've been doing this for many years now,
Mhm. But
right?
this is going to be difficult one way or the other, right? So we're just choosing
Totally. It's
between the two.
difficult. And like you said, one thing is the more we stick to it and really try our best, we can only do what we can. Hopefully, we're starting to minimize some challenging situations and challenging behaviors. And, one of the things I do with parents is kind of lay out what all the challenges are and let's just chip away at it. It's not going to happen overnight. Skills are not built overnight. You're not going to learn how to play the piano like Mozart overnight. You're not going to learn how to ride a bike overnight.
Right.
This takes time and it takes a lot of repetition and energy. At the
Yeah.
same time, the more we stick to that, we will be able to say, oh, wow, of the 10 things or 20 things on my list, we crossed off one. And let's focus on that win and feel really good and celebrate that win.
Yeah.
At the same time, while we're helping our kids build skills, we as the adult are also building skills. Because let me tell you, a 4-year-old is typically not really good with flexibility or frustration tolerance, and we expect that. But guess what? I know some 30-year-olds, some 50-year-olds, and some 70-year-olds who are also not always really good at flexibility, frustration tolerance,
Yeah.
and problem solving. So it's
Yeah.
not just our kids who need to build these skills, it's also us. And the beautiful thing, one of the beautiful things that I love about CPS is we're building skills simultaneously as we're doing this work with our kids.
Yeah. It sounds amazing. So when should a parent seek this type of coaching? And along with that, like what types of scenarios are parents typically coming to you with?
I would say probably fewer than 10% of families come to me proactively.
Mm,
Hey, we're moving cross country and we really need help figuring out how to support our kids during that transition.
right.
Or my partner and I are separating or divorcing. How do we talk to our kids about that? What do we do in those early days? Those
Right.
kinds of things. That doesn't happen very often, but it does. And that's always great, to be proactive. Typically, 90%, like I said, or more of my families are coming to me when they don't know what else to do.
Right.
Maria, I've
That's
read
why I was
this.
having trouble with my question. I wanted to frame it as
Right.
like, does it make sense to reach out proactively or are we waiting till we're
You
like
don't
at our
know
wits
to you
end?
don't know to reach out proactively. How are you going to know like
Right.
your kid at 7 years old is going to be as challenging as they are? We don't
Right.
know that. We can't expect that. And parents are looking for help, I don't want to say all the time, but you have a couple things and you're like, is that expected? Is that developmentally appropriate? I don't know. Maybe I'll just try this. And we try something and it works and works for a bit and then it's not working and maybe the behaviors escalate and maybe those behaviors are not just in the home, but maybe they're at play dates or maybe they're at school in different settings. And then things get really difficult and the parents just like, I need more support. The books are great. There's also some limitation. I love books, like you had commented.
Yep.
Recognize a
We
lot of
all
them.
love books.
I mean, there's even more books in other places. I love books, but the books don't talk to you, right? The
You
books
can't
don't
ask
know
them
who your child
questions.
is.
They don't help you pivot in the moment. You can't come
No.
back to them and say, I tried that and here's how it
Right.
played
And
out. And
tweaking, like, who is this child?
Mhm.
No, I typically don't meet the child. I primarily work with the
Right.
parent, but we are, that's why we do role play. I want to know so much about your child so that, because I talk about CPS all day, every day. And sometimes I am working with a parent of a 4-year-old, and sometimes it's a parent of a 14-year-old. Sometimes it's a parent with a child with disabilities, and sometimes it's not. And sometimes it's a child, a single child. Sometimes it's a blended family. Like, I have to adjust what CPS sounds like in your home so that it works for you. Because if I just read a script, that's like reading a book. It's not going to work for the family. So we role play to say, and I do this homework where I send the parents homework so that we can say, okay, you tried this and what were the bumps that you hit? And that way we can, kind of smooth those out and make it easier for next time.
Mhm. Awesome. And then the second half of that was what are the typical, we talked about challenging behaviors. So let's label some of those. I guess if they're younger, we're talking about tantrums. If they're older, it looks different. So what are parents coming and seeking
I
support
would
for?
say most of the families I work with are experiencing explosive behaviors at home. And typically, the child is not showing those kinds of behaviors at school.
Which makes
And so
parents feel bad, right? Like, oh,
I
it's
know.
me. But really,
And
they're,
sometimes they say, right,
maybe it
it's
is.
me. Or, I guess I'm glad that they're not doing this
Right.
at school, but I really don't want to deal with this. Like parents are walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
Every morning they wake up, maybe with hope that today is going to be different.
Mhm.
And then something happens and it's not different.
Right.
And it's so defeating, right? and I might be going off on a tangent, but just
I love
thinking
tangents.
about how difficult this is for parents of like every day, just feeling like we had a crappy morning again. Like, I don't know. And then when it's a good day, you're like, yay, it's a good day. And then there's this fear of, well, if today was good, does
It's
that
like
mean
you can't
tomorrow I'm
even
going to have a
enjoy
bad
it
day?
because, right,
Right. Right.
exactly.
There's always this like lingering, it's almost traumatic for parents. I
Mhm.
feel like, and before we started this, I was talking about my certification in trauma because it, parents are, and this is not meant to put a, bad finger on kids, but
Right.
parents are sometimes in a trauma state,
Mhm.
feeling traumatized by the child's behavior if they're
Yep.
afraid and they're walking on eggshells. And siblings, right?
Right.
Siblings are also experiencing that every day. And so your question was, what are typical things? I would say it's like everything. Yes, I talk about sleep. Kids are having a difficult time getting to sleep. They're not staying in their bed. They're waking up in the middle of the night.
Which makes
So
for a hard morning.
exactly, exactly. And so, yes, if they're a certain age in certain situations, I definitely pass them on to you. And then, depending on the situation, yes, if there's a behavior component, and sometimes it's a beautiful one. We work together. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's mealtime.
Mm.
My kid doesn't sit to eat. They're a picky eater. What do I do about that? Sometimes it's grades, right? Like some
And
older
probably homework
kids,
struggles.
they're struggling with homework. Every time we sit down to do homework, or every time my child has to study for a math test, there's an explosive situation. My child
Mhm.
slams their door, they trash their room, the way they speak to me is so
Mm.
disrespectful. I mean, it is almost everything has to do with behavior. Behavior, I mean, we're behaving all day long. You're either behaving kindly or calmly or whatever, but you're behaving. Like everything you do is behavior. So every topic.
Yeah. Okay. Love it. I'm thinking of something as you say that. What can this work in your experience if one parent is the one who's sort of driving or maybe the only one interested in seeking collaborative problem solving support and the other is like just along for the ride or maybe even actively like I'm not interested. I'm going to raise my kid the way my parents raised me and it's all very,
Absolutely.
um like how can that work?
Yes, it can. Um, Before COVID, most of my family, I had some clients on video and a bunch of people were coming in person. I typically got one of in a two-parent household, I typically got one parent.
Okay.
Now, since COVID, flexibility, people are more comfortable on video. I get two parents. And sometimes I do work with either the one parent or both parents where one parent's not completely on board. One nice thing is that there are some parents who don't like the idea of therapy. And so I like to explain, like I did before, this is
This is
not
different.
therapy. And so
Right.
it might feel a little more comfortable for that parent who's not into therapy to engage in this because I'm not lecturing, I'm not doing therapy.
You're
This
not
is a
digging up the
partnership.
past.
I've got your back. I really am here for you. I really want to work with you. And what I mean by work with you is not tell you that all the things that you're doing are wrong. It really is trying to see what's working about what you're doing. What are your goals? And is what you're doing working? And if it's not working, let's explore. Yes, I happen to talk about CPS, but we take our time with that to see, what about that might feel right for you. And can you adopt and just try on and practice some of the pieces? At the same time, there are times where I have a parent who's not going to do this, and that is fine. If the child has one parent who is engaging in and practicing this collaborative approach, that is still going to be beneficial for the child. It still will help the child build skills. It still will help the child manage expectations differently and handle those situations and hopefully reduce some challenging behavior. The other nice thing is we are always watching each other as parents, right? So if my husband does something that's awesome with my kid, I'm like, oh. Look,
Right. Or
like,
you just love the result that came from it.
yeah,
You're like, can I get
exactly.
that result?
What was that all about? Right? Without pushing, because we can't make a parent do something. We just like we can't make a kid do something they don't want to do. And so I always tell the parent, do what you if CPS feels good for you and it feels like it's good for your child, then that's your answer.
Mhm.
Right? Like it's got to feel good whatever you're doing. I don't care what you call it, collaborative parenting, conscious parenting, I forget the others. Affirmative parent, I don't know what they are.
There's a
Like
lot of
the other
words.
ones. I can't think of them off the top of my head. I don't care what you call it or what it is. You really just want to make sure it feels good for you and it feels good for the child
Right.
and go along your way. And if your partner is not on board yet, that's okay. Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What if the most of the contention is coming from the parents have different ideas of how to, like, do you feel like sometimes it's even less about the kid and more that there's disagreement, not necessarily contentious, but just like, I think our child responds best to this. And I think, are you
Yeah.
often navigating that as well?
Yeah, definitely. And in all honesty, I think it makes it for slower progress. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean there's no progress. If the parent who's really not engaged in CPS is open to even just listening, I so appreciate that. If they're like, well, I can only come for 20 minutes of the session because of whatever, as long if you show up, I'm just so grateful that you're at least open-minded to show up.
Yeah.
And a lot of, there are times where the parents are just completely on different pages and I can see that this is a real parenting issue. And sometimes I move away from CPS and just focus on that and
Mhm.
helping support the parents, hearing them out, hearing their perspective, and trying to understand where each parent is coming from and trying to, I mean, in essence, collaboratively problem
Right.
solve so that the parents can find something that works for both of them.
Right, exactly. I love that. Um, while you still have your professional hat on, was there anything else you wanted to say about rewards, bribes, punishments? I know we kind of touched on another path away from those.
Something that often comes up from parents, almost like a doubt, is, well, the real world has a whole lot of rewards and consequences. So why would I not
Mhm.
give my child
Right.
a consequence for
If
their
you
behavior?
speed or if you don't show up for work.
Totally. Totally. And I get that. And that's right. The real world does have a lot of rewards and consequences. There's a couple things. The great thing is our home is a safe haven,
Mhm.
right? This is where we practice all those skills so that as your mom, as your parent, I can prepare you for the real world and help you build the skills so that when there are rewards and consequences put in place at work or in the community, you've got the skills to problem solve and make decisions and transition and all of that so that you can fare well in the real world, right? The other thing is, as you're helping your child build those skills, I got a speeding ticket once. I was in my early 20s. I don't even remember how much it was. Maybe it wasn't $500, but it felt like $500 and it felt like $1 million. Guess what? I mention I ran through a stop sign? That's why I
Mm.
got the ticket. I have never run through a stop sign again. Why? Because that consequence really worked. That consequence worked because I have the skill
Mm.
to restrain myself and to slow down, right? I can do that. I have impulse control. I have problem solving, like, oh, I see my speed is 30 and I have to get to 0 in 2 seconds. What do I need to do? Whatever it is, I've got the skills. There are, talking about, people who continually have consequences put upon them and the consequences don't work.
Right.
Criminals, people
Mm.
who commit crimes and end up in jail. That's a huge consequence, They get released from jail, they commit another crime. Why? Not because they're horrible people. They're probably really good people doing the best that they can with the skills that they have. And so I know that might seem a little outlandish, but consequences don't always work.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so it
It's not
really
your
is
child choosing, like, I don't care about this.
right.
It just may be outside of their capacity in their current age, stage of development, whatever else is
Right.
going
Right.
on.
So
Awesome.
yes, parents bring up a lot about, well, the real world isn't like that. And they're 100% correct. And so let's use the time and space that we have at home to help build those skills so that they can handle the challenges of the real world.
Right. Okay. I love that. All right. So I am adamant that on this podcast, we're going to keep it real about how challenging parenting is. And so far, we've done that from the professional side. But now, if you can take your professional hat off, don't be a coach, don't be a licensed clinical social worker, just be a mom. It's easy for parents to hear all of this and be like, well, of course Maria can do that. That's what she does for work. And I bet she's perfect at parenting her children. And,
What if
but,
you ask my 12-year-old? She's like,
right,
why do you call yourself a parent coach? You're not even
right.
good at
Yeah,
this.
oh my gosh. They know how to hit you hard. Yeah, I do want to, like, we're not saying any of this is easy, which we've already stressed as much as we can. When it's your child, it's obviously a lot harder. Your own emotions, your own childhood baggage come into it, all the things you have going on in your life at that moment. Like you said, there's a lot buried under the surface. So from that, through that lens, what are you loving about your day-to-day parenting right now? See?
We've had a
Look,
good amount
your
of hard
answers aren't
days.
so quick when it's a
Oh,
personal question.
because I have to take a step back and think about it because we've had some hard days the past few weeks,
Mhm.
challenging behaviors. And so sometimes it is hard to think about what you're loving when you're underneath the rubble,
Oh, yeah.
you know? And so that's why I paused because sometimes it's hard to find the joy. It's hard to find the great things that you love. Um, I mean, yes, I'm super grateful that I do this work and I do this work every day. So I'm lucky in that way that as I'm working with clients, I'm actually working on myself.
Mhm.
And so I appreciate my clients for that reason because I get to brainstorm ideas and talk about this and share, I share stuff with my clients sometimes.
Sure.
And so, not that it's my session or anything like that, but I am real. And so, that I guess would be the thing that's popping out is that I'm grateful that I, have the support of my own community of my clients where I'm doing this work. We talked about reading. I'm constantly reading and I'm constantly doing this work. And even with that work, it doesn't make it easy. So I can't imagine what it's like for other parents who aren't in this world. And I like when I have reminders, when you do see wins, that does feel good because you're like, okay, we're going to get there. It's not an easy position to take because like I said before, sometimes it's just really hard to see that when you're under the rubble,
Mhm.
but you do have to remember just to look for that, be that glimmer of hope, look for that glimmer of hope and really just keep that as part of your focus because there's a phrase called what we focus on grows,
Mhm.
which, the more we focus on what's working, the more we're going to see what's working.
Right.
And so let's keep, I think I'm good at looking for the positives and
Right.
trying to stay even keeled as far as like not over catastrophizing things. And okay, this is staying in the present moment means this is what it is for today. And
Mhm.
what it is for today is actually no indication of what's in store next week, next month, or next year. So
Yeah.
just
And
in this moment, what do I need for myself? And what does my child need? And let's just focus on that.
I love that. And I have often said, like, there are times where you can't think of anything that you love about your parenting journey. And that might sound harsh. And if there's someone out there that's like, oh, I never will enjoy that, but I am keeping it real. Of course, I always enjoy my kid,
Yeah.
but I can't always point to something specific that feels awesome. And that's important to say, like, if you hit that point in any given moment, just know that it won't last forever. It is no indication, like you said, of, what is coming. The good phases don't last forever. The hard ones certainly don't. So to keep it even more real, without giving away too much personal information, what is feeling super challenging right now? So you've got all this information, you've got all these skills and all this experience, and there's things that have made the last couple weeks with your kids challenging. What does that look like for Maria?
It's hard to find the energy to stay calm. I know in my brain that is the key, and that's just like, it's almost it for me. Like, that is just the one thing, simple thing to do. Just stay calm.
Mhm.
Again, simple does not mean easy.
Right.
And it is so easy. And it feels so good at the end of a situation where I'm like, wow, I did it. That was hard. And I stayed calm. And then you have another situation and you're like,
Ugh. And then you have the battery's more drained to
yeah.
then
And you're
stay
like,
calm
I
again
didn't have
through
a
that
chance to
situation.
refuel.
Right.
So where am I pulling this strength from?
Right.
And that feels challenging.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. As I'm hearing this, of course, I'm thinking through things that have happened in our home in the last few days. Some of them I'm super proud of, and
Mhm.
others I'm like, ooh, I need to I need to rework that in my head and go through it again. I am also, you can weigh in on this. I'm a huge fan of, now granted, my child is a teenager, so language is not a barrier or whatever. Um, I'm a huge fan of apologizing and going back to him and saying, look, dude, I didn't love how I reacted in that moment. And I'm sorry, now that I've had a chance to think it through, I wish I had said or done this. And next time I'll try to do better. I just think we have to be really honest with our kids. Like there can
Mhm.
be like a rupture, but
Yep.
with my understanding about, brain development and attachment research, as long as there's a repair
100%.
soon after, we're back, or maybe even better. So
Yeah.
I want parents to know that too. Like, we all screw up, and it's awesome for your kids to see that you also make mistakes and you can acknowledge them, put them out there.
Right.
Um, and I
And
think that
not
really
let your
keeps it
kid like
open.
keep walking with that burden of, did I do something wrong? Is this my fault?
Right. Right.
Internalizing all that, and let me take that
Yep.
off of you and let you
And
know
just
this is
building
not.
the awareness. Like, I realized I hadn't eaten anything for breakfast and I've been rushing around
Mhm.
so much. And like, of course I overreacted, because then they may notice, depending on their age, maybe one time they're feeling hungry and that's why they're acting, however they're acting, and they're going to go, oh, right. So
Right.
it's that modeling or the talking out loud that I think is really helpful too. So we won't always be able to stay
Right.
calm. I'm also a huge fan of taking like a very big deep breath. My son will often repeat things because he thinks I'm not, and I'm like, I'm getting there. I'm
Right.
gathering myself
Right.
before I
Yep.
react. I want to take a
Yep.
pause so I can respond. Give me a second. And sometimes that's the best thing we can do. It's just don't do anything in this moment. As someone, I don't know if you know the number, but I know that emotions only last a certain number of seconds. So if we can
I don't
pause
know the number.
through that, we can look it up. Pause through that. I think you're already going to do better than you would have, if you reacted right away. Awesome. This is all super helpful. I have one more question for you. What
Okay.
is one thing that you've learned on your own parenting journey that we have not touched on yet, that you wish you had learned sooner, heard sooner, whatever, come to sooner, that you want other parents to hear now?
Collaborative problem solving.
There
I
you
feel
go.
like that's all I ever talk about. That's all I like. My brain is like a short,
That's all
narrow
that's
tunnel.
matter. Yes.
But it is just, I mean, both parenting and back when I was a school social worker, I wish I knew this stuff because it's just such a beautiful way to connect with kids, to really see them as a whole being, to trust them, to respect them, and work through stuff. Like, when my kids were little, I didn't know anything. I only learned about CPS when my oldest was 5. So before that, I didn't know about this. And that would have been, I think, really nice. I think you just, I don't know. I feel like you just never know what you don't know in a
Yeah,
way, which is why I have all these books. Like,
right.
not done learning. I don't know everything. I'm always excited to see what else there is to understand. I think I'm always seeking to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Even if we could be done learning as parents, our children aren't done growing. So we're
yeah.
always going to be learning about more about them and how they need things framed at any given age or stage. I mean, I always
Mhm.
think I have my son figured out, but he's turning 14 and I'm still learning things about
Yeah.
him and remembering what I have learned is that he doesn't always need things explained, presented, framed in the way that I would prefer to
Mhm.
as a parent. Like I want to do things the way that I would want them done for me, right? But we're very different people, and that's been like a constant sort of thing throughout our relationship. When I was helping him learn to sleep more independently, that was our first experience with that. I
Mhm.
wanted to be just incredibly hands on and warm and fuzzy, and I didn't want him to cry at all. And I especially didn't want him to cry alone. And I was adamant about that. And I kind of tortured us, him and me and us, for like weeks and months with these gentle strategies that I do still believe in. I use them with my clients. It's just that they
Mhm.
did not suit him
Right.
on any level. It was overstimulating. It was a tease. I was completely in his way. He needed
Mhm.
me to just back off and let him
Right.
figure it out, which was not my style.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, they're constantly teaching us things, and we're never done learning. That's very true. And of course, when you know better, you do better, or when
Yeah.
you know more, you do differently. However you want to think of that. Um, so hopefully that resonates with our listeners today. Maria, thank you so much for joining me. I'm sure I will have you back again to chat some more. I always love this. I will be back sooner, listeners, with stuff that I and others wish that we knew sooner. In the meantime, I'll leave you with my list of top stuff that I learned the hard way. Accept help when it's offered to you, ask for it when it isn't. You are the expert on your child, so trust your gut. And finally, if you need to be the squeaky wheel. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll be back soon.
Thank you.
Stopping.
I see it blinking.